We need to be inspired to imagine and to wonder just as we need food and water. And if you enter into a relationship with a learner or a teacher with that understanding, and the understanding that it's actually a privilege to enter into a conversation with somebody, I would even go further to say that it is a sacred act to exchange ideas, then you're bound to be successful and you're bound to inspire. As my teaching career progressed, I started to recognize that we teach in very Cartesian ways. We teach science as being separate from math and math being separate from art. What we think is informed by how we feel. How we feel is informed by how we think. And all the things that unite us as human beings are imperative precursors to wonder. There's this amazing creature called the mantis shrimp. And the mantis shrimp has 16 different cones. It can perceive 16 different colors. So if you think about other human beings, students and teachers, as being able to perceive in that way that are not revealed to us, and you think about the opportunity for that unveiling as a consequence of that sacred educational act, you're just entering into teaching and learning from a whole new perspective. You're treating people as being a source of unveiling. And after all, isn't the world about unveiling, the unveiling of reality? That is what inspires me, and I think that is what has inspired the students that I've been in relationship with.
My mother's father was a minister, and we lived in the rural part of the county. And the lady next door was my music teacher. She was the principal of the school, elementary school, and she taught me my first piano lessons. And I loved going to piano lessons with her. She was a very brilliant lady. From that, I went on to become a music teacher myself.
My mother was a hard worker. She's kind, but she's also firm, and she teaches the old school music way, practicing discipline, no fingernails.
You cannot learn music without mental discipline, because learning to play the piano is not an easy job, and it takes time. Music can lead you to a kind of intellectuality that will help you all your life. It makes you close to people. It makes you able to communicate. I loved teaching piano.
Anything can be inspiration. I've always felt like a visual sponge in a way. I was always looking, seeing paint peeling off a side of somebody's house or a barn, or just the way flowers and leaves are juxtaposed with color. Or, a museum exhibition, or what's happening in the world. There's been quite a few moments in my career that reinvigorated me. When I started with Home Fabrics, Collins and Aikman, they made really unattractive commercial fabrics. And when they offered me the job, I didn't want it and declined it, but then he told me I could do whatever I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, we'll try that. In that first year, I completely changed the product to a decorative fabric line. And so we were at market, and the international salesperson arrived, and she was going over the line, and I was in the back of the room. She didn't know me. I mean, I was just a little kid, and she was just going on and on and on about how now she's got something to sell. She could never sell that other stuff. I was just basically like a fly on the wall. And that was probably the first time I realized that I had something.
History is not the past. History is human beings thinking about the past. History has more to say about today than it has to say about yesterday, because we're always evaluating and considering the past from the needs of today, and then we create history. History is a human creation. There's a very artistic element to history. We primarily get our values from what we see. We invent language, we don't invent the optic nerve. So it's important to have a sense of cultural continuity. It's like being in a room without a window and being in a room with a window. The only thing that gives history any value, because we're thinking about the past, is applying it toward today and tomorrow. Historic preservation has really sort of become an abandoned term by professionals. The term that's, I think, more accurate is that we're cultural resource managers. We don't try to prevent change, we try to manage change so that some cultural elements of yesterday come into today so they can be carried to tomorrow.
My books are science-driven thrillers, but you have to keep the science brief. You have to keep it jargon-free. You can't use all that special terminology we do amongst ourselves as scientists. And you have to keep it entertaining, which is not a prerequisite for a textbook. I started out as a scientist, and I think being a scientist makes me a better writer, a better artist, but I think being an artist also makes me a better scientist. There are things now that I observe and take note of that I wouldn't have previously, because now I'm thinking about, well, what does the sound of a fly buzzing in an autopsy room really sound like? Because I might be putting that into the fiction. What I do when I work for the medical examiner or a coroner or the military or law enforcement or disaster recovery team is I work on victims that are otherwise unidentifiable by normal means, because the body is burned or mutilated or mummified or decomposed or dismembered, or maybe just bones. The commonality of everything I do comes down to the bones. What details can I derive from the bones? My career path has been varied, and I enjoy that. I enjoy having my foot in more than one world.
Photography was the motivating factor that got me involved in the arts. It started off as sort of a hobby and a way to work in the dark room and make some prints, but it gradually grew on me, and I could tell that there was some possibility with this. I like to work with my hands, but this is a way to work you with your head and your hands too. I was producing some pictures I liked a lot, and I just decided I want to do more of this. Photography has become sort of the way I relate to the world. I can see the world through the frame of a camera and make sense of it. And sharing that with others became sort of a part of what I did in teaching. And it's been very satisfying to see people take the ideas you try to present to them and go with them and do some really fine things.
Most of our debate topics are current events based. The resolutions that we debate, the statements that we debate certain types of legislation in a congressional style debate setting. That's one event. And so a lot of it is current events based, whether it be gay marriage or legalization of medical marijuana or sending troops to Syria or North Korea or what to do about Iran's nuclear program. I absolutely hope my students are learning things from me, and hopefully I'm providing them with the tools that they need in order to become active and informed individuals for our democracy. I think it's so important today that we create an educated populace that can articulate their ideas with concrete evidence in an ethical way about current issues. And hopefully what I'm imparting upon them is to rise above the empty rhetoric that we see so much today among our politicians and the political vitriol that we see, just the acidity, the hatred on both sides of the aisle. And so I'd like to think that I'm helping my students rise above that and to look at the core issues and try to be able to articulate good ideas on these issues.
The way that I get my students psyched about what I'm teaching is basically to talk to them about them. And you can do that with science because science is a what if. If this happened, what would happen? Pretty much half of my class is straightforward and the other half is theater. I teach because they need me, and my goals are to be there as a facilitator so that I can teach them how to learn without a teacher. Like I tell my kids, I said, I want you to be able to produce without me being here. I need to facilitate and help them understand how to learn.